All right, this is JPEG to RAW photo review show number 36. And tonight we're going over part 2 of the July images. Let's talk first about how you enter. We'll go over that real quick. Talk about this every show at the beginning of the show. If you have not joined before, it's really easy. Just go over to JPEG to RAW/contest. And then there's 2 ways to enter, one through our beginner group, one through our regular group. You just click on that big green link there and enter either one you want. Right now, the theme for September, which ends today actually, and it's going to be the same for November, or October, that's the next month, not November, is going to be open also. If you want to enter through Facebook, there's links down below to both of the groups. And then you go to the Facebook group and the album to enter is at the top of the group. Real easy to enter through that way. All right, AD. So
I'm just gonna put this out there, Mike, right now. The theme for October is Halloween. Come on, people.
You want me to do something like that?
No, you can do anything you want. You get extra points though if you submit creepy Halloween photos. I'm going to give you extra points if you guys can do that.
Okay.
That's AD's challenge. Do some creepy Halloween. There's a guy in town, Mike, that has 150 skeletons on his lawn. 150. Wow. He started setting it up in August. You guys can find stuff like this in your hometown. Take some photos. I'd love to see them. I love Halloween.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to do something with that. Okay, so let's go. We're going to do the beginners group first. We have 2 images from beginners, then we'll go into the regulars group.
Cool.
So let's get started with this one from Norman Schultz.
Hey, one from Norman. He submits now like 3 or 4 times in the last few shows, and that's been great. So I love to see the progression.
And he says, sun out, starting to burn off the morning fog.
Yes. If that was your goal, Norman, that is exactly what you captured. Exactly. Perfect. And if we were going to stop there, I would have nothing more to help you with because you did a fine job. I mean, it's I can see the sun burning through over on the left and some nice fog. And I always love to see these harbor areas. I will tell you what I don't like about the photo is that you took a picture of a gas station. And for me, there's much more out there, the boats, the masts, that sort of thing. But I thought what I would do is kind of show you guys some quick post editing. I'll show you how fast it can be and easy it can be to take a gas station and make it into something that can be more magical and you can kind of wonder about. So if Mike will allow me to do this, we'll jump right into helping the beginners out with doing a little editing. Is that cool?
Yep. And we're
awesome.
ready.
Awesome. So I have a Lightroom pulled up here. Mike is like right on the ball, much better than I am with Janice's show.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Norman, so the thing that stuck right out to me immediately was the red and green sign in the middle of this beautiful scene that you have. You've got a wonderful leading line going out into the fog. So there's a sense of mystery there. But when you put a gas station in a sense of mystery, unless it's an old abandoned gas station that kind of has that look, you're kind of taking a little of the mystery away because we know exactly what we're looking at. This is a gas station for a boat, so you can pull up here and fuel up. So I'm going to show you some quick edits here, man, that'll kind of help you out a little bit with your creativity. The very first thing I'm going to do is crop your photo, and I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff, pretty much these gas pumps. I don't want to see any of those. So I'm going to get rid of all of those. I'm going to leave that little red box in there because I kind of think that's cool. And I'm going to put your horizon almost in the center. I'm kind of putting it a little below center because you have this line, beautiful line going out into the fog. And that natural gradient is, I think, the winner in your photo. So I'm just going to do that crop really quick. And you can immediately see that now we have a little bit more, it's not so blatant that it's a gas station except for that sign. Mm-hmm. So my first inkling was let's go to black and white. And I'm going to end up at black and white anyway. I'll tell you that already because I think that works well with these foggy shots. But I just wanted to show you how easy this is, Norman, to get rid of this sign, which I think is kind of taking away the mystery of this cool little place. I wouldn't know this was a gas station if it wasn't for that sign telling me the price of gas on there. These could be pumps. They could be anything. I mean, you really don't know. But the sign really leads me to know that these are pumps. So if I take the sign away and I saw this for the first time, I wouldn't really know that those were gas pumps unless I was, from this harbor or whatever. So check this out. I'll show you. This is really quick, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the this tool up here, the spot removal tool, and I'm just going to draw. They've made some nice changes in the spot tool now that it goes really quick. So I'm just going to draw that nice little square out. And it's going to pick this space over here, which is okay, but I kind of like this blank spot over here better because there isn't that light in there. So I'm just going to use that to get rid of that. And then you have the little post here, and I'm going to click at the beginning of this post, left click, and then I'm going to hold my shift and then click again, and it's going to draw a straight line there and remove that sign altogether. And all I need to do now is just remove the saturation and turn this to black and white. And there we have more of a classic harbor image without a gas station in it suddenly, because we don't have that sign. We don't have doesn't tell me it's a gas station. So it's this cool building. Yeah. But the real interest, I think, is out in the fog with the ducks swimming and out that way more so than it is really this building. The building's just hey, I'm right here. I'm contrasty. Look at me. And then your eyes follow that leading line into the fog and the mystery. And I think that really brings out the energy and the power in your shot. So I wanted to just share that with you. It's super simple, super fast. Keep in mind too, Norman, and I don't know, this is not anything that I would worry about too much, but when I check the histogram here, you do have some blown out areas. These red areas that are showing up here are actually quite blown out. If you were to print this, they would show lines where it was printed. So what I would be careful with doing is maybe just grab a hold of your the highlights up here and just roll those back until you don't see that again. And that'll make that nice and even there up at the top. So, but that's it. Real quick edit, super simple. And you can adjust contrast and do all that stuff the way you like it. I actually kind of liked it by adding a little bit more haze and going the opposite way with the dehaze, which not a lot of people do, or the clarity, either one, but giving it kind of even a more foggy, like a really socked in kind of look. You can still see the boats and all that kind of stuff, and that just softens it a little bit more.
Yeah, and as Norman pointed out, you would have to do one more step, is get rid of the reflection in the water of that sign.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. Yep, you're absolutely right. Good eye there, buddy. You do the same thing down here that you did up there in Lightroom, and you'll get better results in Photoshop. So this is just I purely show these just for demonstration. So see, it doesn't do a good job with the water down there, but Photoshop would remove that completely, and you wouldn't have any of this. I usually move it around a little bit and see if sometimes it'll snap in, and you'll be like, oh yeah, it worked. But if I can't get away with it, then I run over to Photoshop and I just quickly use the content aware stuff. Yeah, that's what I would do for this, and just smooth that out. And sometimes, guys, just since we're in here, sometimes when you get these little things, kind of if you take another swipe over them, and this probably won't work this time, but you can do two of these over at once. And sometimes you can actually get it to use two of them and move them around to the point where it really will mask it enough that you'd never know that it was edited. But I would definitely use content aware here. So good eye on that, though, Norman. That's exactly what you should be looking for, man. Good job.
Good job, Norman.
Cool.
All right. Next up is... I'm not even ready for this. Hold on. Is this image from Nancy? Nope, not Norman. From Nancy awesome. Smith. And Nancy says that she couldn't help but try and capture a cute baby cardinal. Surprisingly, it sat there for almost a full minute. Cardinals, they're jotting their heads all over the place. They're usually pretty fast, so you got to move fast to capture them.
Yeah, I wish Nancy. I know you're out there, and there's a little bit of delay, so I'll throw this out at the beginning. But please give me some more information. Like, did you have to crop this in quite a bit? I'm seeing quite a bit of noise. I'm not sure what your settings were on your camera or what lens you were using. Maybe we can give you some suggestions there that'll help get you closer to the action. It does seem like it's cropped in to you, Mike.
Yeah, there is some noise there, but so I don't know. Maybe she's having to shoot at a higher f-stop because of whatever lens she's using, and therefore you have to go up in your ISO. I know my longest lens is only a 5.6, a 200 to 500 Nikon.
Right.
So if you are anywhere in the morning or afternoon, you're having to bump up your ISO a little bit. Depending on your camera, some are better with it than others.
Yeah, and that would be my question here is just, birding is an absolute an amazing hobby and profession too. I mean, especially if you're recording this stuff that you're doing and your ornithology labs, I think that's the correct term. The bird watchers like Cornell and whatnot take submissions all the time for their textbooks and whatnot. So if you're doing something like that, it can be it's a very tedious, slow paced and relaxing thing, but you've got to be very patient. And you're absolutely right. These birds, they're the minute they see a lens, what I've found with birds is that the minute that they see a lens reflection, they bolt. And I think it's a predator response because they're used to seeing like reflections of light out of their eyes for a predator coming at them. And so a large, like an owl would be a predator, or a raptor, and they have bigger eyes, and I think the lens kind of freaks small birds out from what I've seen. We have blue herons in our pond, which are fairly large birds, but they're fairly skittish, and so when you can approach. The minute I lift the lens, though, and they see the light reflect off the lens, they bolt. And I've noticed it's a pretty steady thing. Like I've tried all sorts of different things, and man, I can get right up to them until I have the lens, and then they get all upset at me. So
the only birds I've come across that are not super skittish, because they're always like on edge, ready to jump, is vultures when they're close to a meal.
Right. Yeah. Because they're protective and they're willing. So Nancy says that, and I was going to ask this. This is funny because I used to do this as well. She said it was a 70 to 200, so I'm assuming a 2.8, and that's the lens that I had. And she did have to take it through a double pane window. I used to have my bird feeder outside on the porch, and we had these big glass windows, and I would sit at my table and drink my coffee in the morning. The birds would all fly in, and I'd have my camera there. And it's same exact thing, Nancy. So I totally know where you're coming from. So that's what I wondered about, whether or not there was some sort of something else going on. And so most of those big double pane glasses are usually UV reflective. So you do lose some light through them, and you do lose some spectrum through them as well. So that can cause noise in your image. So yeah, it's a tough thing. It's a beautiful photo. You focused right on the eye. I had one suggestion. I told Mike I have this one loaded up in the edit too. And my only suggestion here, Nancy, is that generally when we include negative space in an image, we want that negative space to be opposite of where the subject is facing. By facing away from the negative space, we're kind of like leaving an untold story, and it's less supportive. It's actually the negative space starts to have more power when we put it behind something. It becomes background and not really negative space. So essentially what we have here is, I think, a real good candidate for a portrait shot. And all I did was just bring this over and put the bird there, and that was it. And I think that brings you're not getting any closer, so you're not really cropping, you're not cropping in tighter, so there's no real loss there. But this puts the more of the negative space to where the cardinal is looking, and now it becomes a supportive area rather than like a background or like a wall behind something. So your shot becomes more targeted, I think, when you put your subject, if they're kind of facing away. Now, there are some times when you can do that with a portrait and you're portraying like a melancholy look or something like that. You can use that negative space as like the past left behind and, thinking about that part of the story. But in the case of where you have like a bird like this, who's facing to my left, you would want to make sure your negative space is on the left of the image. So that was the only suggestion I had here. As far as shooting through the window, keep going. I used to have a blast. I got thousands of photos of birds that I shot, and they're for me. I just like birds. So
Yeah, I do too.
you know, I'm not releasing them to the public and worrying about, you know, technicality and all that kind of stuff. If you really want to get into it, you're really going to want a 400 millimeter lens, or you're going to want a 2.8 prime and then an APO 1.4 extender. And I would highly suggest that you shoot in crop mode if your camera supports that. So like my camera supports crop mode. And when I do that, it multiplies my focal length by 1.5. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially, if I end up with 200 millimeters, if I'm zoomed in, it gets me up closer to, what was that, 350 somewhere? Yeah. So, but you can also use the multipliers, and just keep in mind though, if you're not using a 2.8 70 to 200, a multiplier is going to drop that down to probably f4 or f4.5 for your zoom in, your lowest f-stop. Because you do lose light through those.
Yeah, so. I can't remember what brand Nancy uses, whether it's Nikon, Canon, Sony, or something else. For me, that's one of the reasons I got the 200 to 500. It is a 5.6 lens, so you will need some decent light to use it. But it is she is D7100, which I think is a Nikon, and that is cropped, and it's a crop camera. So I went back to the D500 because I wanted a crop camera too.
Right.
Because that same thing you were just talking about, when I'm shooting wildlife or sports, that crop is great. The 200 to 500 is, when you're looking at lenses, when you said a 400 2.8, that's crazy expensive.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, that's if you're going to pursue birding.
Yes. Like, that's a career.
Well, I mean, if that's going to be your main thing, you might as well chuck your other lenses and just sell them all and get the big gun.
Yeah.
At that point, because it's really, and I know that there's a couple birding YouTube channels out there that talk about a couple of cheaper lenses that are actually very strong contenders when it comes to that are in the 300 millimeter to 600 millimeter range, but still 5.6. Yeah. And they're still affordable, but it's good glass, and they're fairly in focus. I will tell you, most of the 70 to 200 lenses at 200 millimeter are going to shoot well at f2.8, which is more in the center of the lens. But there's some big differences between like APO glass and I can't think of what the other, like Canon calls theirs. It's like, is there FD and FL, or
I don't know what.
I don't know. Everybody has their own, numbers for it. But the higher end glass is usually, like in Sony or Minolta, it's APO glass, or now it's G Master. I think they renamed it or something. But where I used to have struggles, I had a Sigma 70 to 200, and when you get to 200 millimeter at f2.8, you would lose a lot of the sharpness on the outer edges of and cheaper lenses that you will see that. If it's a decent 2.8, then it'll be fairly sharp all the way out. And I think most Nikon and Canon lenses are pretty well on the money.
One of the other benefits of a crop camera is it doesn't go out to the edge of the lens.
Right, that's correct.
You're using more of the sweet point of that lens. Nancy mentioned something that I think all of us face. She's been trying to decide between a bigger lens or a full frame body. And in that, I mean a lens or a body. Unless you have unlimited funds, it's all it's a give and take. Do I spend my money on this, or do I spend money on that? Lenses, it depends. That really you can only answer, Nancy. But lenses generally you'll keep for a longer period of time than you will the camera body. So you have to ask yourself what is not working and which one of those will solve it for you. If you're looking at a longer lens, the Nikon 200 to 500 I just got is under $1,500, I believe. And in that same category, there's like a 150 to 600 Sigma, I think maybe a Sigma Sport. That's going to be maybe a little bit more expensive than that. The Nikon 200 to 500 has got some good reviews. I did want to ask one more question about that image, and I don't think there's any magic here. It's just, it is what it is, AD. But as you shoot with higher ISO, every camera is going to get noisier and noisier. Some better than others. How do you handle noise?
Well, so you guys were talking about this on the show the other night. Well, no, this is on the macro show. Janice was talking about it, actually. Keep all my shows straight. And she was showing people that there was noise in an image. And so a lot of people will sharpen an image in Lightroom and then be like, oh, there's too much noise. And don't realize that you can sharpen without amplifying noise by using the masking properties in Lightroom. So before you attack noise, make sure that you're not just automatically, because Lightroom, when you load in a raw file, automatically sharpens to 40%. It moves to 40 automatically. And most images need that. They need that, like out of the camera, they need that 40 in order to look, halfway decent. As far as I don't usually do overall noise reduction or overall sharpening. So I will generally use the adjustment brush or use a tool like Nik software, or now it's DxO software, to actually sharpen zones of the image rather than to go through and to try to just do it overall, because I've never been happy with the results of the noise reduction. I like DxO's noise reduction in DxO Pro Optics 10 and 11. Both of those are good programs, and DxO has pretty much, from what I've seen between Topaz and Camera Raw and Luminar and all of these programs, DxO has the best noise reduction I've ever seen. I've been able to take images that were pretty grainy and make them look fairly like clean. In fact, to the point where you're like, you couldn't tell that it had been denoised or shot at, say, ISO 2000. Yeah. So it's one of those things. Just be careful with your sharpening. With birds, a lot of times I will, especially if you're cropping, I will usually use a masking and fiddle with the masking and the detail and the contrast on the sharpening tool, so that I'm really just sharpening where I want to.
And when you sharpen, are you viewing 1:1 or 2:1, or what level are you looking at when you're doing that?
If you do 2:1, you'll drive yourself insane, because you're going to see everything, and you'll never see it like that. I mean, it doesn't even print like that. In fact, a lot of cases, some noise in an image when you print it is actually much more desirable than none. And like you said, Mike, and we've talked about this before, some cameras produce amazing noise, and you're almost like, oh yeah, I wouldn't touch that. It looks nice and filmy and great. Some cameras, not so much. And the noise that we usually should be concerned with is chromatic noise, which is where we see the red and blue noise dots coming through. I don't mind seeing, like with her image here, I think mostly with her image, I could tell it was cropped because it looked a little soft. And that's where noise becomes a problem, is when it starts to make your image look soft. So that's kind of my, my rule of thumb with any type of noise reduction, with dehaze, with clarity, is generally I will adjust until I can see it, and then I'll back off 25% from that. So whatever, like let's say if I adjust the clarity up to, I got to think of numbers here that I can do quick addition in my head or multiplication. So if I move clarity to 10 and I can see it at 10, I'll move it back to about, say, 7.5, right? And just move it back a little bit. And then I know I'm kind of in the zone. And there's exceptions to that rule. If you're doing an art project and you want a real grainy look, or you want a real clear look, and you're going for that effect, that's a different story. But if you're looking just to get the basic adjustments on your image, that's always a good rule to go by. It worked when I was mixing music the same way. If you could hear the reverb on the vocals, and you just wanted fullness, you didn't want that echoey sounding like you're singing, in a bathroom somewhere, then we would go to when you could hear it and then back it off 25%, and that would put it right in the sweet spot. So just keep that in mind. Generally, when you're doing processing on photos, one adjustment while you're looking at it is fine, but then you make other adjustments and it'll amplify
Right.
those other things. So that's why we use that rule of thumb, is so it just doesn't get out of hand. But
Okay.
the only thing I can tell you, Nancy, is just keep trying to get closer. That's what I did. And with birds, it's patience. Mike will tell you this: you pretty much got to go sit and not move.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
does take
just
patience.
sit there with your camera. And the thing I found is you can set your camera on a tripod where the birds are going to be, and get it all focused, and use a remote.
Hmm.
And they don't care about your camera. They only care really about you.
You out there
And
holding it, yeah.
right. And when you're moving the camera, the reason why I say that, and you heard me say about the lens earlier, is because when you're moving your camera and you're holding it up and you're moving it, the lens is reflecting. So that's bothering them. But if the camera's just sitting there and it's not moving, they won't freak out so much, because they really don't see it, because they don't get the glint of light like when it's moving. So,
yeah. All right, let's move on. That was it for the beginners group. Now we're going to move into the regular group. And first up over there is this shot from Spencer Sullivan. And I think last show, so this is show 2 of the July images. If we didn't go over your image in the beginner group in 1 or 2, we have one more we'll do. But I believe we did a different one for Spencer last show that had a lake in front of it. Right?
Yeah, it looked like it could have been on the other side of this mountain someplace, right?
Yeah, I think so. And Spencer says, one of the many meadows I hiked through on a recent backpacking trip. I think this was like a 13-mile hike, if I remember right.
Yeah, I was looking at the other image because I wanted to see if I was like, I'm always interested, like, is it in the same place or is it close? And it really does look very similar, like he was over to the left of the shot from last week.
Right.
And this is more over to the right, which is cool. That's fine. Totally different view, right? And
Absolutely.
I think this shot, I like the other shot, but I like this one, I think, a little bit better. It's a little overexposed, it's a little hot. But other than that, I like the composition here. I love the tree in the foreground, but then it's almost like these little trees are like running to join the big forest. That's what I get out of this. Like, little trees are like, wait for us.
Wait for us. Oh, that's that. Yeah, I did not notice that.
So it's just I like that he put the little trees there. It gives some context to a new forest growing, and there's some burnout trees in the back. So it's kind of a regeneration of life, and that's always great to tell, like, a story within a beautiful backdrop like this, with the big mountain that stood the test of time back there. But it is I think it's a little blown out. At least it looks that way on my screen. And it's just a little hot. And so I would just be careful with that, Spencer. I can't really tell, to be honest with you, because I'm not on a calibrated monitor here in the center. So I can probably just do the right thing and drag it over here. Yeah, it does look better on my calibrated monitor. So you might, without throwing it into Lightroom and actually looking at the histogram, it would be hard to say. But I like this image. I think it's a great image. And that's what you got to do, folks, when you're out there, is walk around, get these different perspectives.
Yes, I believe it is the same mountain, just a different look at it. Because I'm looking at the one he had previously, in that little hump you see on the far right.
Yep.
That little ledge. I think I can see that in the previous image. So this is, I think, is him just coming from a different angle. So same mountain, same hike. He was able to get totally different looks from it.
Yeah, very cool.
And you had shown earlier the little red outline at the top of one of the images. I think Norman's image, the fog image.
Yes.
If you use Lightroom, that you can turn on those highlights and the shadows to show you where you have blown out areas. So that's a trick. Sometimes it can be distracting while you're editing, but it's good to know where those are when you start.
That's for sure.
All right. Up next is a shot from Norman, and it's this one. Not Spencer. Hold on. Norman Schultz, and he says, sunny day 50 feet away with a Tamron 18-40 on a 7D2.
Nailed it. Nailed it. All right, Norman. So you're kind of new here. You're just getting in here. Tell me more about this shot, buddy. Tell me what you're going for here. What made you pull the trigger? Were you just got to use the camera, got to take photos? Let me know what you're thinking, because for me, it's a very targeted shot, and it's very noisy because it's the lily pads are, I think, whereas Gary brought up this in the chat. If you guys, he talked about the cardinal and maybe the bokeh was a little bit too strong with the cardinal. And that depends on who's shooting it and what they want. But I think here, this image probably could have used a little bit more bokeh to kind of, it looks, like a lot of foreground, a lot of background, and then the lily in the middle. They're all struggling with each other because it's targeted right in the center. Mm-hmm. You might be able to vignette this a little bit. I didn't do an edit here. We're going to show in a few photos from now. I'm going to show you how you can remove distractions in an image. But I think that, like, when I get an image like this, I want to simplify it a little bit. You could edit this, Norman, to make this a real winning shot and keep the flower right in the center because it's kind of symmetrical. I like that part about it.
Right.
But I would go in and I would get rid of all the floating dust particles because they're not really doing anything for you. I'd probably vignette this to try to make the lilies calm down a little bit. A real soft vignette will quiet them because they're very contrasty. The water's dark, the lily pads are bright, they draw your eye away. So it's just all of that sort of stuff to keep in mind. You could also go to the extreme here of really messing with the contrast a lot in a big vignette and just really highlight this flower only. I did an image here a while back that was very similar to this, and the pond detritus was what made me take the photo was the flower. I love the fact that these flowers float on water and they're just gorgeous to look at.
Yeah, and I love the reflection of the flower.
Right. Yeah. And so for me, it was like, I asked myself, I'm like, well, what I really like about my photo, it was like, well, I stopped to take this photo because of the flower. So what I ended up doing is going with a high contrast black and white, believe it or not, and then getting rid of everything but the flower and the reflection and turned it into more of a fine art piece where it was just this soft lily on a black background, which was, not the way you're used to seeing it, but it really just minimized all of the players in the image so that there were no distractions. There's just so many distractions here. I want to look at the flower, but we got all these speckles going on, and
I imagine speckles are stuff on top of the water, right?
Yeah, they're just which would be a lot of work, but
it would be. Yeah.
Product photographers do it all the time. If you've ever seen product photographers remove dust, as much as you blow dust away, even still, there's still going to be stuff there. They spend hours and hours and hours on product photography, just removing small specks and this and that to make the product look absolutely spotless and clean. And I think that this image just, I like all the kind of stuff under the water. I like that. I like how that's distorted. I think that's a neat, like the stems and things look cool. But you ask yourself, are they what the subject of the image is? Do I want to just, am I looking at that? That might be an image in itself. And I think we've brought this up before. I see a lot of photos that have many images in one image. And a lot of times photographers don't think about that when they're taking the shot. They're thinking about, the one thing. They kind of get tunnel vision, right? Mm-hmm. They say, oh, the flower. But then they don't realize you got all this competing stuff going on. That's the hard part with photography, is really sorting that all out on the spot, only a few seconds to make up your mind. Photography, we say it's easy because everybody has a camera, but it's not really easy to churn out award-winning shots. So that would be my suggestion for Norman, and I'm not getting any feedback from him in YouTube. So, Norman, next time you submit, man, let me know what you pull the trigger for.
I do like the flower, I like the color of the flower.
Absolutely.
And all that. The specs are, that would be a big undertaking to get rid of all those things, but it does distract from the image. And I don't know if you did. I don't know if he has Photoshop or Lightroom. You can try getting rid of some of those things. It might be faster than you think.
Yeah, using the heal tool in Photoshop is lightning fast. I mean, basically, you're just going around and clicking all the dots; they just disappear. And I think it, like that's the thing, Norman. So Norman just posted. He just said that I never thought or noticed the debris, and that's just something that's why we put a second pair of eyes or a third pair of eyes, or we do these critiques, is because that is something that does take away from your image. And so I've kind of been there and done that and seen a lot of images and just trying to help you with that. So,
yep. Well, thanks, Norman. Thanks for contributing. I think almost every month. So thank you, Norman. All right. Up next is this rose from our friend Millen.
Yes.
And Millen says, rose after rain, red rose with some water drops from fresh summer rain that has fallen recently. I used a flash to capture the image, but then, of course, that caused problems. But then I had to remove lots of white dots from it because the flash, I'm sure, hitting those water droplets created a whole bunch of reflections. The image is cropped, and I am wondering if a 1-to-1 square crop won't look even better. And he goes into some of the settings.
Well, I think he's right there. So just going back to Norman's caught up with us in chat, he just said that it was the reflection that drew him to the shot, and that's it right there, Norman. That's your key. Is just if that's what drew you in, then focus on how you can make that the most powerful part of the image in your post processing. And remember, it's okay to post process, especially like when you're trying to learn, because you're going to see things better. And then as you go. And as you progress more and more and more, your post-processing becomes less and less and less. You end up getting it in the camera a lot more the longer you do it. So you kind of got to go through that barrage of learning how to post-process and do all that stuff. Sometimes it can save your rear in a lot of cases too. So it's good to have those tools. So all right. So Millen, I agree with Millen here. Lesson learned, though, diffuse that flash if you can, any way that you can, when you're doing these sort of images, to get the light to kind of not be so pinpointed or disperse a little bit more. But sometimes it's kind of cool looking too. So it just depends on your taste and what you want to do. But I agree with him. There's some out of focus parts in the lower part of the image. I think that the real detail in the rose is kind of that upper part. And I love all those little sparkles of water up there. So maybe a square crop and then kind of moved a little bit more towards the top here probably would have suited his taste. And, he's already said it. So do it, man, do it. So, play with it. See what you think. Because ultimately, in the same with Norman's shot, these are great shots and we're just lending creative ideas to help you expand and grow and try new things, because we all get in ruts and whatnot. That's why we do these critiques. It's not to cut anybody's images down. It's not to say you don't know something. It's really just when we know what you're going for, then we can offer a better suggestion as how to get there, because you're saying, hey, man, I want to learn this by telling me these things. So when I don't have that information, we kind of just have to wing it because we got a show to do.
Yeah.
People expect to. So I just kind of break it down to like the very basics. So when we look at these images, I try to think of, well, what would a beginner want to know about this image or about Millen's process to kind of help them a little bit more as well. So I think the key here is the light reflections. I like those. I would love to see like how much he removed and what it looked like before
and after. Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, because sometimes all those little white specks on the droplets look like glitter, or they lend to it, and sometimes they don't. So this is a perfect having these two shots back to back.
Yeah, I'm kind of, if you look over on the left side where you got that one drop on the left that's got a bright spot and then one toward the bottom. I'm betting he had some things that were much worse than that. And if that's the case, it's probably not going to come across looking like glitter. It's just going to look like bright spots all over the place.
Right.
But I would like to see the before and after. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree too. his color on here, Christina brings up a good point. Red is a really difficult color. Two colors in most cameras that are very difficult to process: purple and red, and mostly red because it has purple in it. But it's that ultraviolet part that cameras don't work very well with to represent. If you ever see something that's lavender or purple and you try to take a photo of it and match it, it's very difficult to match it, to get it perfect. So roses are the same way with the red roses, and he did nail the color on this rose perfectly. It is not oversaturated and it's not undersaturated. It looks like I could reach into the screen and touch it, and that's a tough thing to do with roses.
Yeah, well done.
Good job.
Well.
Yep.
All right. Up next is this image from Jose Matutina. I love the detail in the wings of this dragonfly. Oh, let me read what he says. He's a dragonfly, found a dragonfly on my daily jog around the home. First off, impressive you're carrying your camera with you while you're jogging.
Yes.
And he took it with a Sony. So there you go. He must have sunlight bouncing down on this guy, and he got some great detail in the wings.
Yep.
The wings close to the body.
Yeah, Mike. So when you look at this image, immediately what comes out to me is that the skeletal part of the wings in the light, right?
Yep.
So if I'm evaluating like my image and I'm saying, well, what's really popping on this image? The color's good. I like the color's very vibrant. I love the back. I mean, you could tell he's just hanging out here, sunning his wings.
Yeah.
But that detail, especially in that lower wing, that's what really attracts me. I look at this image 3 or 4 times. I keep going back to that part of the wing. So I guess my question would be to Jose, and I don't think we have him out in the chat. I think he might be in a different time zone. Is he shot this at f6.3 ISO 400? Great, man. It's the noise. Wow. All right, what's he on? He's on my camera.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's really good. Nice. So my question is, why the just under traditional, the weird crop, I guess is the way I can put it. I hate saying weird but it looks like it's an 8x10. So I don't know if he was like thinking of printing it or, whatnot. So maybe he could, let us know on that. I immediately though, I've got this up to edit it. I just want to show you some quick stuff. We talked about the stuff to do to an image. So let me don't pay attention to what just happened there, although that looked pretty cool. All right, get down there.
They did
all right,
look pretty
so
cool.
right. So the very first thing I did was I cropped it, and I cropped it a couple times, I think. Yeah, that wasn't the crop that I did. So I don't know where that stuff came from. All right, I'll do it all from scratch. So essentially what I did was I went to a portrait crop, and then I was like, because when I first saw this, I didn't really pay attention to the fact that it wasn't a standard 4x6 crop. So I kind of turned the crop this way, and I kind of liked the crop, but once I changed it to a 4x6 crop, I really liked it because I think it brought it in a little bit tighter. So I kind of put his head right in the thirds because his head's in focus. It looks pretty cool. And obviously the eye, right? But then the wing is also the other thing that we want to see here. So after I did that, though, I was kind of like distracted by the stalk a little bit. It's a little bright. So the last thing that I did to remove the distraction was just bring in a little bit of a vignette. And I'll show you, I make it really soft. And then in order to remove the rest of that, I'm going to put down a gradient just on the bottom. So now the light seems much more focused on him, and you don't have that distraction with the stalk at the bottom as much. And now I'm really drawn right here on this image. I really have a clear, the rest of the wings and stuff weren't really doing anything as far as, support here goes. It's this area right here. I mean, look at that. It's just tight, and that's just
No,
Absolutely.
I love the detail there. I don't think I would have thought, and I wonder, if the other beginners would think to crop part of the wings in.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's okay to do. I mean, I've done it a lot more uh, in my shots as of late. Sometimes I want, usually here's my rule of thumb when it comes to this, and we have another image coming up that I'm not editing, but it suffers from the same exact thing that I kind of wanted to talk about,
Okay.
and this image kind of talks about it too a little bit. Is so if my background is not interesting and not supportive, and the negative space is not really where it should be, then I'll crop in tighter and get closer to what I love about the photo,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to minimize the background from being a player in the image. So that's why I cropped in tighter on this. So if you look at the background on this, it really it doesn't have a whole lot going on. I would even say that you could even do uh, if you wanted to keep it more like this. Now your negative space is more over here.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that actually.
and you have more of the wings.
Yeah.
And that took out that jagged piece at the bottom, which was a point of interest too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, yeah, Gary's been watching the show. It's it's the star of the show. And the background is not like, let's make it a supporting role and not so much of it. So it's okay to take a little of the wing off. We're not really like, there's nothing, you're not like, oh, there's something going to grab his wing over here.
Yeah,
We're
because
not really
out there it
missing.
does go out of focus more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I love the closer in you get to this image,
I know.
the more amazing it gets. So, excellent shot. And I think it just comes down to just a little bit of creative cropping or creative composition to really, kind of put it over the top. But I just wanted to show, like, moving those distractions out of the background, a slight vignette, or sometimes using just a gradient tool to drop the exposure a little bit, can really take a really simple adjustment. And you can go the other way too. If you want more, you can fiddle around with bringing up those colors and balancing them out. I use gradient tools a lot to balance my images, so that if I have too dark of a spot, and I'll put one like this, and I might be like, I might grab one and go, all right, well, I need a little bit. This needs to be booted up a little bit here. And these little adjustments, you don't actually see them in the subject, but it allows me to balance the light all the way around without, going in with an adjustment brush and messing with that. And I can make zones, and that way I've got the green balanced all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
So they're definitely a powerful tool to help you to control your overall composition and color. So
Yep.
I like it. It's a cool image.
Well, great to see those different edits, AD. All right, so up next is a different image. Whoops, I got to switch this over to us. From a photographer we've seen a lot, but this is a different image for him because he's usually only landscape. Yeah. This is Daryl Harrington, and he even says in here, he says, as you probably guess by my previous post, I don't generally photograph people very often, but I usually do at photo conferences that I've attended for the last 8 years. Two cool things happen at all big manufacturer or camera manufacturers. Where am I at? I covered it up. Are there with their gear, and you can borrow them free of charge. So he's at a photo conference, and this year he says they brought some cosplayers and to blast a photograph him. So there's going to be another photo, I think, next time. Both photos I'm posting were taken with a borrowed Nikon D850 and an incredible 105 1.4 lens. And he even said at this conference that he goes to that Don Komarachka was one of the speakers.
Yeah, so that was kind of like when I did the Pro Photo Expo in New York City. Same thing. I've got a lot of shots of steampunk girls and guys juggling weird things, and it's just really cool because the camera companies know you want to try out their lenses, you want to see what they can do, see what the bodies can do, how the autofocus reacts to normal situations. So they provide these models to come in and you to shoot. And a lot of times when you go to like unveilings of cameras, like Canon with their mirrorless system that they just came out with, they did a big thing in Europe and they did a big thing here in the United States where they'd invite key people to come in, and they took them through like an escape room type thing, but it was just like all these different scenes set up with these really cool, like they'll do maybe they'll do a water splash thing, or they'll do like, you know, the where they throw the colored dust and everything,
right?
And all this crazy stuff, but that's just going to make their cameras look better when they provide these awesome people for you to shoot. So immediately what comes to mind is, so a lot of people don't realize that I've shot my share of people as well as landscapes. I don't put any of my people in portfolios because they're part of clients, and I don't put their photos out. They're people I've shot for. I've shot scenes. I've done composites for people. I've done whole setups where we set up smoke machines and everything else to get the shot. Cool. And so it's one of those things where I worked with a portrait photographer. I basically was a landscape guy, and I hooked up with a portrait photographer because I wanted to learn more about portrait photography, and he wanted to learn more about landscape photography. So it was one of those things where we both could help each other. In the middle of all of that, we had this crazy epiphany that there is no difference. Because really it just comes down to the lens that you use, the lighting, and this kind of stuff. But it happens the same way when you're shooting landscapes as well. And what I found was that he was missing from his shots was that he was missing the composition of the location. He would go a location shoot and he would shoot a shot like this. And I'm like, well, dude, why'd you go to location? You know, because shot that out back.
Yeah.
If you use anything for the background, you know, so the whole idea was, if you're going to have this beautiful background, like I could see a tree there, a pine tree, might be something else behind there. I don't know. But I think I would have got a little bit tighter in on this guy and seen like a little bit more of the lines and things in his face, a little bit more detail, a little closer to him. And then if you're going to come back, give some space so that we can see put him in a background or angle yourself so you get some of the background information in there to give him like a scene, you know, make him part of that. And we've talked about it before. If you're gonna use a location, make sure that your location is supporting your work. So it's super tight. I mean, I looked at the original on this and zoomed in. The focus is amazing. It's great.
Yeah.
I would hope. I'm sure that lens is a very expensive lens at 104 millimeter 1.4. That's a big giant piece of glass. So I think it's a wonderful image, but I think it clearly shows that in his first line of text, it's a very centered headshot.
Yeah.
You know, and so I would like to see, you know, Daryl do some stuff to shoot more people with his camera, with his camera, but kind of like use the background a little bit, and don't be afraid to shoot landscapes in landscape mode with people in it. They're much more interesting images. If you think about like the most powerful images that you've ever seen with people in them are generally when they include beautiful landscapes too. If you think about the wedding, on location wedding shots, very rarely are they just shooting the couple close up. They're shooting them, you know, with the gown out on a beautiful veranda with the ocean in the background. I mean, you know, take from that cue a little bit. So when I saw this image, I thought, you know, first thing was, wow, that's super clear, super sharp, excellent job. But it really just was like a headshot to me. So, you know, it didn't really have the background. I didn't see any creativity as far as like using the location. And I don't know what was there. So, but usually they provide a pretty decent backdrop for these guys too to shoot against. And you can talk to them and say, can you move over here? Can we do something with this? You know, that sort of thing. So hopefully Daryl's doing that. I like the one that I shot at was all indoors. So the backdrops were all
fake,
like Well, they had fake backdrops, so
Yeah.
you had to be really. I shot this one girl she was really like working for my camera really well. She knew I was shooting photos of her. She was playing to the lens, and doing everything that she was supposed to do. But I could not get the background in all of the shots they took, and maybe we can look at those at some point. Not tonight, but I can show you how I struggled with. I ended up with no shots that I would show anybody because essentially the background just was not playing into the photo properly. I could not get the lights where I wanted them to be right. And it was not her, it was just the way it was set up. It just was not conducive to getting a decent shot that I would say, wow, that's a cool shot that I want to show other people.
Mm-hmm.
She was beautiful and the background was beautiful, but they didn't work together. And it was just one of those things where no matter what I did, I couldn't change it. So,
well, he mentions this photo conference. I've never been to one. I'd like to go to one.
oh,
and he said it's
man,
like
they're
2
awesome.
days of nothing, 2 days of nothing but photography. And you can borrow these lenses and do all this kind of stuff. So,
Well, it's like the world's most targeted Best Buy store with all the professionals that know how to use the stuff in one place.
yeah.
So you go there and there's no dumb questions. One of the greatest thing is most of these places that you go, I got both my camera bodies and sensors cleaned for free because the companies are there. And they're like, drop off your camera when you come to the show. And, an hour and a half later or by lunchtime or whatever, they do them for free.
Yeah. Cameras and lenses.
Cameras and lenses. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're not taking them to Adorama. This is like Sony was there cleaning lenses. Nikon was there cleaning lenses. Canon, Olympus, Fuji, they're all there like taking care of people's cameras and solving issues and problems. And it was really cool.
Yeah. I need to do that sometime. All right. Our last image we have up is this one from Gina Clark.
Hey, Gina.
And Gina says, 2 of my granddaughters looking for the secret garden.
That's awesome.
She has such cute grandchildren.
And she always does a really nice job. And I think that with this image, I really like the fact that she's playing a little bit more with the color, and she's softening the palette a little bit here. And she made this a nice soft image with some mystery in it, with the nice dark vignette. This is a perfect example of, we don't want to see the detail in those trees. There needs to be some mystery out there. So she's framed it nice with the grass. It looks like the littler girl.
Yeah.
She looks like she might be a little bit like, I don't know if I want to go out there.
With her hand up like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So she caught that decisive moment. It's excellent. The only thing I would throw out here, and it was mentioned earlier, is I'm not a big fan of the watermark. It really takes away from your image, especially here where I want to like kind of I want to be consumed in the movie aspect of the image, and right in the zone is the watermark.
Yeah.
So good placement. But
outside of that, I like how they're looking down the road that goes out into the darkness. So she caught them at the right time, looking down that way, and we can see the little trail or whatever that is that's going out that way.
Yeah, it's excellent. Yep, it's got that leading line without being so obvious, and I love that even the grass particles of the grass and stuff, she softened those out a little bit, and yeah, it's excellent work. This is a good example of how you can, this is a great example for putting, I don't know if you put them in this order on purpose, but with using your location as part of the story. That is a perfect example of that. And she did it right on the money. So
awesome. Gina, thank you for entering. And that was it for this week.
Very cool.
I mentioned this before. I don't have it ready for tonight because I'm a little off my game tonight. But what we're going to want to do in the future, AD, is use one of mine at the end where you can critique me.
Okay.
But I don't have that set up for tonight, so we'll have to do that in a future show.
Yeah. Well, when I get back from my trip, we can work on that.
Yeah, we'll work on one of those for me. So, but as we get ready to head out, we got a few things to go over. Where is this? There we go. And first up is if you want to subscribe to the show, head on over to jpraw.com/subscribe, and there you can see where we have links to iTunes, video large and small, YouTube. That's a funny looking YouTube icon.
That's a Reddit icon, man.
What is that doing there? I think whoever wrote this plugin changed something. YouTube and then Vimeo, and where you can get that. But also head on over to the explorographer.com, which is where AD's site is, and you can go and find all the ways to connect with AD over there on his Connect With Me section. He also has the Photo Tools store over here at Photo Tools. Let's see. Yeah, Photo Tools Store. Explorographer.com/Photo Tools Store. And you got plugins for Lightroom and actions for Photoshop and all that kind of stuff, right, AD?
Yep.
And I know you got some new stuff coming out. Is that out yet?
It is not. It's if you're a Patreon.
In beta?
Yeah, if you're a Patreon person, you're testing it for me right now.
Okay.
So
it's in beta, so it'll be out before long. And then, of course, always go over and check out thecreators.com over on Patreon, and consider becoming a patron. I'm not logged in, so it doesn't look like I'm in there. Hold on.
Oh no.
Well, may not want anybody to watch my password.
We are this week, before I leave, I am going to be doing a show dedicated to Aurora 2019. And as some of you may or may not know, I was working for Skyloom Software for a while, and I'm a huge fan of Luminar. The digital asset management tool is coming really soon. I can't say when, but I can tell you that it will be in the next update. And that's awesome. But the big thing is that Aurora HDR 2019, I have tried every HDR program on this planet. I have every one of them. I have all of them. And I have never liked Aurora 2018, 2017, Pro, whatever. It just never got the job done for me. It was close, but it wasn't. When I do my work, I need it at a certain level, and it just couldn't accomplish that. This version of Aurora 2019, I will recommend it to anybody and everyone who likes or even doesn't like HDR. It is, I don't know what they did. They have this new engine called the Quantum engine, which I think is silly to name it that, but whatever. It doesn't really matter what they call it, but no halos, no, there was a softness problem with 2018. That's gone. The images are sharp. They're amazingly balanced and natural looking. They don't look like fluorescent mess. It is really a big step for them with this new version. So we do a live stream on Monday nights. Sometimes it happens on Wednesday nights, but it's a show very much like this, except for I usually do tutorials on that show. And I'm going to be doing one on Monday night, and it's going to be Aurora 2019, and we're going to be showing all of the new features and the power of this program, which has blown me away. So
they're saying they're hearing an echo.
I don't
happen
hear
when
anything.
You change the screen with web. I'm not hearing.
You don't have YouTube running in the background, right?
No.
Huh.
I don't know.
Weird.
I'm not seeing any other audio coming from anywhere.
No, and I don't have any echo from you at all. Everything sounds good here.
Happen when you change the screen with the web page. Yeah, the web page should not be generating audio. I have that turned off.
Yeah, and I don't have a live source of audio. Everything's pumped into my head, so we don't have speakers. Don't work here, so that's weird. Sorry, guys.
Fix it. Apparently it's stopped now. And I'm not going to be able to log in because my password is not set up on this computer. But go over to the creators.com on Patreon. There's a link. If you go to Patreon/thecreators, you have it there. Or there's also a link on AD's page, AD's site, I should say, somewhere. Where's it at over here, AD?
The Patreon?
Yeah.
It's under Learn Photography.
Under Learn Photography. Yes, there you go. Right there, Patreon. You go there and consider becoming a patron. And when did you say you're doing the Aurora one?
This Monday.
This Monday, tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do, they happen around 8 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
And basically just come on and we're going to demo the program. We're going to show you there's a bunch of new features, but mainly I have 2018 and 19, and I want to show everybody the difference between the two. Because there's a huge difference.
Yeah, I have 18. I'd love to see the difference.
Yeah, I was blown away, man. I liked 18, but it couldn't quite produce the results. I gave it to a few friends to beta test for me. One of them's an artist who we've talked about, Walter, before.
Mm-hmm.
He's a high-end published artist who sells many thousands of dollars worth of photos every weekend, and he just could not get the sharpness. He was having a real problem with the images looking soft, and we tried a bunch of different things with sharpness, and because I did find out that when it loaded it back into Lightroom, sharpness was now turned off, where most HDR it turns it up to 40. But that still didn't. I still noticed there was a difference in the images. But this version of Aurora is just unbelievable. It's amazing. And I think they're selling it for like $59 if you don't have it.
What if you do have it?
If you do have it, the upgrade I think is I think it's like 29 or 19. It's not. It might even be just a free upgrade. Don't quote me on that though. Yeah. So I would have to look it up. Obviously I'm not selling it to people because I don't know right off the top of my head. I am an affiliate with them, but ultimately you guys are going to play with it for free because you can download it for free and play with it and try it yourself. Mm-hmm. I encourage people during the show to do that. And then if you decide that you want to buy it, that's going to be up to you. You're going to look with your own eyes. I just kind of guide you through what I see. And so you can kind of know some things to look for and what's important to me as far as when I process an HDR. And I only use it for HDR. I don't use it to process, like people say, well, you use it to process any of your other photos. Trey this is a program written by Trey Radcliffe and his team. They're kind of the developers of it. They worked on Photomatix as well. But he likes to do single images as HDRs. Single images are not HDRs. Doesn't matter what you do to them. They're just never going to be the dynamic range of when you take 5 shots and cover all that range of. And also one of the other things that we might touch on, I think I will, as a bonus, which we do on the show once in a while, I'll give you bonus stuff. And tomorrow night, I think what I'm going to do for a bonus is I'm going to show people how to do the pixel shifting super resolution on a standard camera. How's that?
Oh, wow. That sounds interesting. All right. Yeah. I'm going to do my best to be there tomorrow night.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming out. I think that's all we have for tonight, AD, right?
Yeah.
All right. We'll head into post show here for a little bit. And we'll talk in post show about when we're going to do another show. But until next show, keep shooting. Good night, everybody.
See ya.
See ya.